For literally thousands of years, humanity has relied on two incredibly profound, yet totally different technologies to completely transform the mind. On the one hand, you have the molecule, right, typically taken in ceremony, and on the other, you have the practice, developed through years of super disciplined attention on the cushion. Now, what's really fascinating here is that for almost all of recorded history, the psychedelic and contemplative traditions have basically developed in parallel. They were rarely, if ever, actually talking to each other. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to look at how modern science is finally bridging that ancient gap.
We have to start by acknowledging the massive paradox at the center of all this. These two paths have historically been treated as total opposites. Think about it. The molecule represents a sudden chemical event. It's an altered state that is basically thrust upon you. The practice, though, is a gradual, earned skill. It's a slow, voluntary effort to train your own attention. I mean, from the outside, they look absolutely nothing alike, right?
Okay, let's dive into this. Just imagine what scientists discovered when they finally asked the exact same question of both traditions. When researchers took highly experienced meditators and then took subjects on high-dose psychedelics and put them into the very same fMRI scanners, they were looking to see what happens to the brain when the sense of a separate self loosens. And crazy enough, they kept finding the exact same answer, written in the exact same neural network. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to explore two roads, one destination, the address of the self, the slow path of meditation, the fast path of psychedelics, when both are combined, and finally, the science of lasting change. Section 1. The address of the self inside the default mode network. Let's start with the actual hardware. You know that feeling of being a separate you, that little voice in your head reading your emails, stressing out about tomorrow, and replaying yesterday? Well, it turns out that isn't just some abstract philosophical concept. It actually has a physical address in the brain's hardware. That address is the default mode network, or DMN. First characterized by Marcus Rothschild back in 2001, it's a set of midline hubs in your brain, anchored primarily by the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex. The main thing to understand here is that this network is most active when you are just at rest, when your mind is wandering, or when you're digging into autobiographical memories. It is literally the engine of the narrative me. Now, having a narrative me is super adaptive for planning and learning, obviously, but it comes with a pretty major cost. When the DMN becomes overactive and rigid, it essentially traps us. An overly rigid DMN is the exact neural seat of rumination and depression, the threat-bound self in anxiety, the craving self in addiction, and the trauma-locked self in PTSD. Getting caught up in your own story happens right here in this network. And that is exactly why quieting the DMN is the shared target of both contemplative and psychedelic therapies. Section 2. The slow path, meditation, and what practice actually does to the brain. Which brings us to the slow path. For literally centuries, contemplative traditions have been down-regulating this specific network without ever knowing its biological name. They did it simply by teaching practitioners to repeatedly return their attention to the present moment. The landmark neuroimaging evidence for this came from Judson Brewer's team at Yale in 2011. They put experienced meditators in fMRI scanners and found that the main hubs of the default mode network were deactivated. And this wasn't just for one specific type of meditation either. It was totally consistent across concentration, loving kindness, and choiceless awareness practices. On top of that, these meditators showed stronger coupling between the DMN and regions involved in cognitive control. Basically, meditation acts as this durable, self-administered neuroplasticity. The story of you doesn't just vanish, but its grip weakens, and you actually gain the ability to step out of it whenever you want. Section 3. The fast path, psychedelics, and what the molecule does to the brain. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it perfectly illustrates the fast path. What meditation does over years of slow, durable remodeling, psychedelics managed to do in literally a single afternoon. Psilocybin, through its active metabolite psilocin, binds to the serotonin 2A receptors that are densely packed into these exact same high-level association hubs of the DMN. And we're talking about a massive 38% drop. When Robin Carhart-Harris and his team at Imperial College London first imaged the psychedelic brain in 2012, they found that psilocybin didn't just light the brain up with chaotic activity like everyone assumed it would. Instead, it caused a massive 38% reduction in default mode network activity.
And the sheer magnitude of that reduction directly tracked with the subject's intensity of ego dissolution, that profound feeling of totally losing their separate sense of self.
A few years later, Carhart Harris and Carl Friston developed the Rebus framework to explain exactly how this works. Rebus stands for Relaxed Beliefs Under Psychedelics. Think of the DMN as sitting at the very top of your brain's predictive hierarchy, constantly broadcasting high-level beliefs, like the absolute certainty that you are a bounded, separate self. Psychedelics, pharmacologically, relax the precision of those top-down beliefs. So when the tight grip of the DMN loosens, lower-level information just flows freely. Networks that normally never talk to each other suddenly start communicating, and your rigid self-model temporarily dissolves.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4. 2 roads, 1 destination. The convergence of the molecule and the practice. So we essentially have 2 incredibly different roads leading to the exact same destination. The subjective feeling of ego dissolution, which is described in practically identical language by high-dose psychedelic users and advanced meditators, converges because the underlying neurobiology converges. But we absolutely cannot ignore the differences here. The meditator's dissolution is an earned skill. It's voluntary, it's gradual, and it's stable. You actually build the capacity to stay there. The psychedelic dissolution, on the other hand, is an event. It's involuntary, abrupt, completely overwhelming, and temporary. It's gone in a matter of hours. They find the same door, but they open it in entirely different ways. And that leads scientists to arguably the most exciting question in the entire field today.
Section 5, when both are combined, the science of synthesis.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we finally stop treating these as entirely separate paths and actually combine the molecule and the practice together in rigorous clinical trials. Just look at these 2 landmark studies. Over in Zurich, Smikielski gave psilocybin to experienced meditators during a 5-day retreat. The molecules significantly deepened their meditative experience, and it produced lasting positive psychosocial changes even 4 months later. Meanwhile, at Johns Hopkins, Griffiths gave psilocybin to healthy adults but paired it with different levels of meditation support. They found enduring increases in meaning, altruism, and gratitude at 6 months, and crucially, the group that had the highest support for spiritual practice saw the largest lasting effects. Zurich proved the molecule deepens the practice. Johns Hopkins proved the practice converts the molecule's acute state into lasting traits. The container absolutely shapes the outcome.
Section 6, the science of lasting change, neuroplasticity, and integration.
Mechanistically, though, why should a single dose on a random retreat change someone's behavior 4 or 6 months down the line? Like, how do these 2 completely separate tools actually work together to rewrite the brain's hardware? Well, the unifying answer is neuroplasticity. A huge 2023 breakthrough by Molinaire and colleagues found that psychedelics directly bind to the TRKB receptor, which triggers brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. You can think of BDNF like Miracle-Gro or fertilizer for your brain. This binding triggers incredibly rapid dendritic spine growth in cortical neurons. Essentially, the molecule throws open a massive temporary window of structural plasticity. Your brain becomes highly, highly moldable. But moldable just isn't enough on its own, and that's where meditation comes in. Sustained practice is the disciplined machinery that shapes what actually grows through that window, and it keeps those new neural patterns alive long after the window closes. You'll actually hear this popular metaphor floating around a lot. Psychedelics are like training wheels for meditation. The basic idea is that the chemical gives practitioners this really vivid, deeply felt target of self-transcendence. It shows them exactly what they should be navigating toward during all those long, hard hours on the cushion. So the crucial point is, we really need to subvert this metaphor a little bit, because a vivid state is absolutely not a trait. Without the slow, disciplined work of integration, a psychedelic experience is honestly just a beautiful memory. It fades. The molecule might be the potent catalyst, but the daily practice is the ongoing chemical reaction. Neither the sheer romance of the psychedelic breakthrough nor the strict, rigid discipline of the meditation cushion is entirely sufficient on its own for most people. Ultimately, these 2 ancient paths are not opposites at all. They are simply 2 interfaces for the exact same underlying system, approached from totally different directions at totally different speeds. Meditation is the slow, durable path. Psychedelics are the fast, revealing path. As the neuroscience clearly shows us today, they partner perfectly. The molecule throws open the window, and the practice shapes what comes through. Humanity built both of these amazing technologies thousands of years before we ever had fMRI machines to actually understand them.
So I'll leave you with this to ponder. With the hard data finally sitting right in front of us, are we finally ready to integrate the instructions written in ceremony and on the cushion millennia ago and truly unlock the mind?